Okay, thank you very much for choosing this panel. We have a wonderful group of women joining us today. I have Zeynep Keskin, COO from SAP. Then we have Emanuela Aureli from Spencer Stuart. Then we have Paola Scarpa, Data and Insights Director, and EMEA Women and Leader from Google. And finally, we have Shelley McKinley, General Manager, Tech and Corporate Responsibility from Microsoft. I will just start very briefly by introducing myself. I'm Deputy Director for Education and Skills and Head of the Skills Center at the OECD, an international organization based here in Paris. And I would just like to give you a couple of findings from the OECD surveys to help kick off the debate. So we've been looking at when the gender differences in STEM start and the implications that they have. And our findings show that they start really early. At the age of 10 and at the age of 11, we find consistently in all countries, irrespective of the quality of the education systems, that boys do better than girls in maths, while girls do better than boys in reading. Obviously, this is nothing inherent about gender, because in education systems that are of high quality, both boys and girls do very well, while in education systems that perform badly, both girls and boys do badly. So the girls in good education systems are doing much better than the boys in poor education systems. But what is surprising is that the difference is consistent across all countries in our survey. Now, what are the implications? The implications are that women do not choose STEM subjects in tertiary, and therefore, because they don't have the degrees, they find it very difficult to move into any STEM industry, into the digital economy, and so on. Now, when we go back to the girls at the age of 10 and 15, and we find out why do we find these differences, and we ask the top performing girls, these are girls that are actually doing as well as boys according to our survey, we find that they think they're doing very badly. They feel very anxious, and their teachers, parents also think that they're doing badly, and also think that a career in STEM is not good for them. So the problem is that as soon as they have the choice at the age of 16 to choose subjects, or when they move into tertiary, because they think they're not good in those fields, they just don't choose them. So what happens is that by the age of 27, the difference between boys and girls in maths has increased dramatically, because girls at the age of 16 have stopped choosing maths, while the difference in reading, where girls have an advantage at the age of 15, have disappeared, because boys do continue reading for many reasons. So the gap that we find at the age of 15, in maths, the advantage for boys increases over time, and we assume that for the rest of their lives, the advantage that girls have in reading disappears. So this is bad news, but it also has nothing to do with the ability that girls have, that it's more to do with the perception, the cultural perception from their families, from their teachers, about their ability, their expectations, and how well they're doing or not, irrespective of the actual performance levels. So anyway, so my first question then is to Shelley. Microsoft has done a study on precisely differences in STEM among girls. So I would like to understand what are the main findings, but also in all your questions, I would like to understand also what do you think are the good practices that can help us overcome this problem, because it is going to become, it is already a big problem. It is going to become, I think, a greater problem in the digital economy.
Great. So can you guys hear me? Is this on? Oh. Love it. All right. Hi there. I'm, excuse me, Shelley McKinley from Microsoft. I work on technology and corporate responsibility, and that is really all about using technology to drive positive societal outcomes. The STEM question is such an important one to us as we think about the future of the planet. Really, to kind of follow up on what you said, fundamentally the study that we did, which was across 12 European countries about 18 months ago, found very similar results, I think, to what you've really already mentioned. First of all, we see that from 11 to 15 is the window almost uniformly across Europe and in the United States, according to a separate study that we did, is the time when girls are interested in STEM subjects, when they really have the window to really attract girls into this area and make it stick. At about 15, as you mentioned, what we found was drops off dramatically. That varies a little bit by country. I think Russia had the kind of, was an outlier in terms of is a little bit older. I don't know what they're doing there. It would be interesting to find out. But at that time, also drops off with boys at that time, frankly. It's teenager years. But what you don't see is in the lift back at the end when you start choosing your subjects and going into more higher education. Fundamentally, what the girls told us, it was 1,100 girls that we talked to. No, 11,000 girls that we talked to. What they found was that they wanted more role models. They said, I don't see people like me that are doing STEM subjects. So where are those teachers that are STEM teachers, predominantly male? They were very interested in thinking how, what it would mean for me in the future if I were actually to take a STEM career. They wanted more hands-on and creative experience. That really shouldn't surprise probably anyone in this room. Not to gender stereotypes, but girls, I think, are pretty creative. I have a 17-year-old girl myself. She's really creative. Be that from, her excuses for why she's not home on time or why she hasn't done her homework. We're a creative bunch. But they really want life applications and experiences. How is this practical to me? How can I use this in what I'm doing? And the STEM teaching that we have isn't always necessarily so practical. And they finally found that more mentors inside and outside the classroom. So that really goes back to the first point, which is more teachers in the classroom that are encouraging girls in STEM. Outside the classroom, more adults that have STEM careers. And also, interestingly, they told us that if they knew that women were treated equally in STEM subjects in the workforce, they would be more attracted to STEM. So those were fundamentally the studies that we had, which tells us, frankly, that we need to do a much better job at this 11 to 15-year-old window to attract girls to STEM. And so I think that's when we think about best practices that I know we're going to talk a little bit more about later. The things that we do at Microsoft, for example, I know many other companies, is we really try to we run programs that are focused specifically on girls. We're in a program called DigiGirls that brings girls into Microsoft for a week, shows them what it's like to be at Microsoft, teaches them coding skills to really kind of spark that interest. And we've seen some good results from it. This isn't a scalable solution. Maybe we can talk a little bit more later about what would be scalable solutions in terms of STEM, but certainly one company cannot actually make a scalable solution to solve this problem, but we all have to work together.
Okay, thank you very much. So now I'll move to Zeynep. And we know that a very small proportion of students choose STEM at university in general, but very few women. And definitely in topics such as physics, maths, or engineering, there are almost no women.
No women.
Now, my question is, what can we do about this, but also, what are the consequences of this? I mean, can we help women not only when they make the choices at university, perhaps through career guidance or other means, but also can we help women that have already gone through university through training at work, apprenticeships, MOOCs, all the other tools that also technology gives us today to help them retrain in STEM if they decide that this is a good option for them later on?
Okay. Yeah, thank you very much. You rightfully, picked on the right initiatives that this starts at a very early age, right? It starts from it starts with your life at home, and then in school, and then in your career. So we usually have the tendency in our family, majority of the families, we still observe that with girls, they say, okay, study like art, literature, which I respect, which is great. But when it comes to boys, they are more encouraging for them to have careers or education around STEM. I will give a very example from my own. At my age, in high school, we had two options, for example, to either, at the last 3 years of high school, to either choose science or literature curriculum. My father at that time said, choose literature. I mean, you're thin, you're weak. I mean, you will be very tired. I mean, take the easy step. You'll be fine. My mother, who couldn't study medicine because her parents said medicine is not good for you, she encouraged me and insisted that I study science. So it's just a sample of how it starts at the family at very early ages. Then at school, we have to have our teachers encourage girls that they can go up in the ladder with STEM, with technical education, or go into jobs that around technology, be an astronaut, be a physician. Again, it's lots of encouragement at school. And they have to share the stories of others. I think role models will help a lot for girls to see what they have gone through and then to have the inspiration and act accordingly. At work, then it comes to the careers. As we are more few around STEM, then you have a fewer options, especially with technology companies or with other companies where technology now is the core and is the main essence of our work. Then you have less options as women while going into your careers. And when you go into the organizations, you see less women around you. You feel alone. You are just a few around the table. I have been in many meetings where I was only female, where I had 20, 30 other men with me. Then you start feeling alone. How am I going to be supported? Then it comes to the importance of the company culture. We should really encourage women staying in that role as well, encouraging them to move up the ladder, because those women will be the role model for others, and they will encourage others to move into such careers or such education or such roles. And for companies, it's on our shoulders. We have to have our purpose around raising girls, raising women around STEM. Like Microsoft, I'm sure many of our companies have lots of initiatives around that. We also do similar initiatives, having girls at early ages like 10, 11. We call it Smart for Tech or Tech Girls. We invite them to our environments and let them see how the life is. And when they see it real, they become more inspired. They start like going into coding or software development. And today, it's around applications, right? And how can we miss that feminine touch in applications, right? I mean, this is the right time for many women to step into such careers, because how can we miss that feminine touch in all the applications we download? I'm sure when you have the feminine touch, we will have lots more applications to download and to use. So I think it's 3 steps: family, school, and the corporations. And we have to have this purpose of sharing and raising the role models around that.
Okay, thank you very much. So we know that the problems start at school. We know that it gets amplified at university or tertiary education. So what can private companies do in order to attract the female talent and to retain it, given that, as you said, one of the problems is that you get into a sort of negative loop where if women don't see other women in those companies, they may refrain from even applying from joining. Sorry, Paula from Google.
Yes, I definitely agree with my colleagues. And if I think about the experience coming from Google, for example, we start from the young girls. It's interesting to understand that all the companies have similar project. Our project, namely, is Mind the Gap. So we also invite, young women in our company, but definitely this is not a scalable solution. So I would like to see also the schools starting teaching coding, computer science to all the students. Of course, could be the girl, could be also the boy, in order to increase the attention to this kind of opportunities. What we are trying to do, of course, when we are trying to hire new Googlers, for us is very important to try to force ourselves to have always a pipeline of potential candidates where there is a balance between men and women. It's not always possible, but of course, if you start with just one woman, if you have 4 candidates, one is just one woman and there are 3 men, the unconscious bias force you in some way to choose a man. So it's important to start with a pipeline that definitely there is a gender parity, of course. And after that, it's important to have a real diversity and inclusion culture. This is not just a value. We definitely need to live it, and we need as a manager to be a role model for the new people, because you can hire the best candidate, the best women in STEM or whatever, but at the end, if the culture is not the one these people are respecting, they will leave the company. So it doesn't work. There is something that I appreciate a lot. We launched a sort of an hashtag in September at the managerial meeting in Dublin. That is, it's up to me. It's also in my computer. This means that diversity inclusion is not something for HR. Of course, HR can help you, but it's management ownership, a responsibility. So I think if you really want to make a change, all the managers, whatever they are, men and women, they should be engaged in this kind of opportunity for women. They should have a measurable OKR or objectives that in some way should influence their career. Because at the end of the day, today, still also in Google, I think the women are more or less 25% in the leadership. It's not enough. We need to increase this number. But we need the men helping us. Otherwise, we'll be just in a battle between women and men that doesn't make any sense. And another thing can help a lot is also to create a community. We have the Women-led community, for example. I'm proud to be part of that, where not just women, but also men are all together to help each other, not only in the company, but also to help externally, to create role modeling opportunity, to help women from they are very young, when they have started the university, when they are coming back from maternity, to show them and to help them in this particular moment of their life.
Thank you very much. And now Emanuela from Spencer Stuart. So we've been talking a lot about what are the cultural issues that prevent women from choosing STEM subjects at university, from joining STEM industries. So what would be the right policies that either private companies or governments could put into place to avoid these cultural biases, which seem to be underlying all these challenges that women face?
I absolutely agree with everything that has been said, and we are very much in a journey. We've started this journey, and we are, each of us, author of a generational change, which takes time. And what we're doing today is part of it. It's a little step in that right direction. The journey starts early in life, starts when a girl is 4 or 5, starts in the family and in the relationship that the girl has with the father, not just the mother, and how that relationship develops. So how do we inspire young girl to stick around and really choose STEM? And you quite rightly said about this unconscious bias in perceiving girls being less good than boys. And this is with teachers, with parents, and then later on in the business. So once the student decides to choose a STEM career, the other hurdle is how companies attract these women and how they retain these women. And this is where culture is also a fundamental factor. So the inclination of women is to be in an environment that has a sense of purpose. We need to see a higher degree of why we do what we do. Also, we need to see an environment that stimulates collaboration and innovation. And very often, unfortunately, STEM environments, this could be finance, could be technology, could be biotech, are associated with a world of men. You were mentioning that you felt lonely. I've been in this industry for 20 years. I felt lonely very many times, and I'm sure we all felt the same. But this is awfully changing. Interestingly, there was a recent study that emphasized how also culture across countries has an impact in supporting women in STEM. So we identified that 41% of Algerian computer scientists are women, when 20% of American are computer scientists. what a difference, right? Who would have guessed that? And also we see that high percentage in countries such as India, Korea, China, Singapore. So what is that is prompting family and government to support these women in STEMs that we are not doing in the Western society? And one of the arguments, take it as a provocation, is that perhaps this is given also by the fact that somehow we live in a more comfortable society. And these others are associating the qualification in STEM as the better opportunity in life to get a better job, and as such to have more money. And there is a higher pressure in these societies to embrace that reality than there is in our society, where ultimately women are more inclined to just choose what they have a natural passion for, right or wrongly. And the other point I want to make is this delicate crossroad we are, this excited voice in the ethic of the revolution ahead of us.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll just make a comment and then see if there are any questions from you. If there are, we'll move into answering the questions. If not, we'll continue talking among ourselves. But the other studies that we're carrying out are about how the impact of digitalization is changing the demand for skills, because many of the jobs are becoming automated, or many of the tasks are becoming automated, and therefore the jobs are changing very rapidly. And what does the future of work look like? And what does that mean in terms of the skills that people will require? And of course, one of the main findings, which is expected, I guess, is that STEM skills will increase in demand very, very rapidly. So that's why I was saying before that it's been a problem for some time, but that it will become a greater problem for the future if we don't find a way to engage women. And now a personal note, you mentioned about your parents. My parents still haven't forgiven me for choosing STEM, I think. but one of my sons is working on the digital industry, designing video games. And I asked him before coming to the panel, how many women? And he said, what do you mean, how many women? Just a couple of women in human resources. And I said, what? What's the ratio? And he said, well, there's no ratio, there are no women. And I said, why? This is in the UK, by the way. And he said, well, why would any woman want to come here if it's just men doing the designing? It's an uncomfortable environment for them. So that's the sort of negative loop in which we could get, where even if we convince women that they have the right skills or that they can acquire the right skills, not only through school and university, but as I said, adult learning, on-the-job training, MOOCs. Now, there are many, many ways in which women can retrain as adults. And now we know that we need a lifelong learning system so that all adults can continue to upskill and reskill. So this is a chance for adult women to acquire these skills. If they then fear going into these environments, it will not work. So how do we break that barrier, which seems to be a big barrier from the women's point of view? Anyway, that was a kind of wrap up. So I would like to know if you have any questions for us, because if not, then we'll continue talking and sharing our experiences. Yes?
So thank you very much for the inspiring. It does. Okay, so
We don't listen to you.
okay, so So my name is Alessia Sonaglioni. I'm here interested. Yeah. Okay.
We don't listen.
I don't listen. Okay. No. Okay.
to that.
Yeah. Okay. So thank you very much for the inspiring conversation. I have a daughter who is studying engineering, so I'm very proud of that. But if we come back always to the same, saying that it's about culture, education, and then of course the culture in the companies, I mean, the only leverage that we could have, I'm speaking about European countries where schooling is public. I mean, this is about how the teachers are also trained. So, I mean, we can continue saying Microsoft is doing this and that, and I don't know, Google or whatever. But if we, I mean, it's about politics. I mean, in the large sense of it. So this is, I mean, for me, it's the crucial issue, because when we speak about culture and education, we can continue for ages, maybe 100 years, and then we will be here back again, hopefully not, and say, okay, it's about culture. So culture changes very slowly, actually, compared to technology and whatever. So what is your point of view? How can we make pressure on politics in the larger sense? Thank you.
Thank you. If you want, because I would like to share with you something that we are doing exactly with the Women's Forum. We launched this year the Daring Circle. This is a way to stay together with the other companies that are partnering these initiatives. We are exactly discussing that. So together with BCG, Spencer Stuart, L'Oréal, Orange, and many others, sorry if I not remember all the names, we are discussing exactly what we can do on STEM, and we realized it is one of the issues. So this is a 1-year project, but what we want to do really to create something, a clear action plan for the public as well. If it's needed, we are more than happy to go to the European Commission, say we want to do something. And to do something for the public sector, because as I said at the beginning, if we don't start to teach this kind of stuff in the school, it will be quite difficult. And it's also a good opportunity for all of us as a companies to work together, because of course it's not scalable. But if all the companies that are already doing something like that work better in a more coordinated way, all together as partners, perhaps it's become more scalable. Also to be one big voice, not against, but to provide just one voice to the external.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. It's also, we need the governments to push for that as well. Not only companies, the schools, they have to question whether they're giving enough coverage and inspiration to girls to go into STEM-related subjects. And also as companies, how they include women, whether they are in their management roles or at board levels, etc. It's not only enough to be in the company and to join a company. I think women should also move up the ladder, because we have to inspire others as such. I have a dream, really, I simply have a dream that when we look at our leaders around the globe today, they cover this issue more in their speeches, in their dialogues with the public, right? How many leaders today cover, yeah, I have a campaign or I have a program that I will encourage women or girls to go into STEM first, and then companies to really have serious initiatives around having more women around the table. So I believe it should be part of that dialogue as well.
So just to, I mean, that was the point that I made at the very beginning, is that, you know, companies can't do this alone. It's not scalable. It has to be government led and partnered with companies. But I think when we think about, you know, your comment about AI and, you know, automation and how that's going to put people out of work and change the future of work, I think fundamentally we've got a massive opportunity, because we've talked a lot about how that will actually disproportionately impact women. And that means we're going to have to reskill a lot of women. And what can we do? We can reskill those women in the future of work, and we can actually leapfrog them in. If we think about, you know, they'll still be doing their old school work, and we'll be like doing brand new future-oriented work. I think we have a massive, massive opportunity if we can do it right. And I think that the government has an incredible role in that, as do others, to inspire them.
As I said earlier on, this is a journey, and it will take time. Unfortunately, there isn't a quick turnaround. It's a generational turnaround. And I believe the accountability is with each one of us. What do we do every day to change the agenda for the better? And then, of course, is the pressure that we can, together, put with the government, with the broader institutions, with the school, with the business. And the business has to take hard metrics and accountability in its own right. Actually, you three represent great company in terms of promoting diversity, and probably among the globe in technology, the best. And the way that you manage to push forward the agenda is because also, let alone the great initiatives, also because there are KPI, tangible KPI in the business to promote diversity. And this is where the game starts to change. In the role I have, very often people say, why there are not many more women in the short list, right? And I can't mold who doesn't exist. That journey starts earlier on. But I can consult in being more creative, in looking at women in a different light. You know, Lean In and McKinsey recently did a study, and in these studies they identified that for 100 women promoted to manager, 130 men are promoted. More seriously, when they reach SVP level, only 20% of this category is women. Why we're bleeding? And that's another discussion.
Okay, I'll just end this round by saying that it's true that there are challenges at different stages. So I didn't mention before, I mentioned the differences between boys and girls very early on in maths and reading. What I didn't mention, and I think it's very revealing for this discussion, is that when you look at differences in science, there aren't any gender differences in science by the age of 15, according to our PISA survey. And still you get exactly the same as in maths. Girls think they're doing very badly, girls feel really anxious, girls feel that there's not right for them, and teachers and parents the same. Although you find no differences in performance whatsoever. So I think career guidance that was mentioned before, it's really important. I mean, you mentioned the importance that mothers have in wanting their girls in Asian countries to go to choose the subjects that lead them to the jobs that are well paid and so on. So I think career guidance is really important, particularly at transition points. At the age of 16, when you had to decide between the literature and science, as I did, when they make choices at university and so on and so forth. And this is where governments have a big role to play, to explain to girls and women what are the consequences of the choices that they make, what kind of jobs they aspire to have, what kind of wage ranges they can aspire to have. And I think it was very interesting, your comment about Asia versus Europe, because we can see that education systems in Asia are improving very, very rapidly. And one of the big differences between Europe and Asia is the commitment of parents to make sure that their children perform. And they make them responsible for that. If you ask students in Asia why they're doing well or not, they say, it's my responsibility. I need to put more effort. If you ask the tiger moms, obviously they want the children to do very, very well. In Europe, if you ask the 15-year-olds, they say, it's luck. There's nothing that I can do about it. And if you ask parents, they don't seem to be very bothered. So there is a big cultural divide now between Asia and Europe. And I think it would be interesting to see how Asian countries evolve. But I think there are many lessons for European countries to be learned from that huge overtaking that's taking place. Any more questions? Yes.
Thank you. My name is Zdravko Kračić. I'm coming from... You hear me? Okay, sorry. Is it better? Okay, my name is Zdravko Kračić. I'm coming from Croatian origin, living in Belgium. I have a super interesting information maybe for the end. In the European school this year started STEM workshops for the kids, from super small kids. So it is actually, European school is actually a mixture of 28 countries. So it's there is no difference visual difference between the boys and girls who has something or doesn't have money to buy an iPad or something because everybody has something. So it's super interesting group of kids. And this year there is a start of STEM workshops based on Lego education kit and program. So it is they actually have a this is the first time in Brussels that this started, and in this particular level, it's fabulous. I'm a father of two girls, 8 and 12, and I'm their ambassador here. This is the reason why I'm here. So it's a super amazing thing for them because there is in this particular stage there is no difference between the boys and girls. How fast, how clever, how smart, or witty, or whatever they are. And my question was just to define the point where this difference starting to be in which particular case, because we cannot cure if we don't know the reason why the something started. This is something what I was listening whole morning. So something what I would like just to say that this kind of schools, like European schools, are a fabulous place to start because there is no big difference in the money how much their parents get or something. So it's pretty cohesional place, and this is, let's say, good information for the start. It started this year. Okay, bon appétit. Have a nice lunch.
Any other questions? Yes.
Hello, my name is Vincent Esposito, and I'm an involved father, and I think in Western countries we do have a role to play in the way we educate our kids. Can you understand what I'm saying? Yeah? And I think that we should challenge in a way all the time. I have a boy and I have a girl, and I kind of challenge them both all the time, because otherwise they will always go to girl-oriented toys and boy-oriented toys, you know, all the time. And my daughter, she likes pink toys, and my boy likes blue toys. But actually it's because the society, advertising, and, you know, make them feel like that. And I think we have a role to play in that, to create the right environment so that afterwards our girls will imagine, oh, what about STEM? Because that actually STEM offer boys. And what about like nursery school for boys? I don't know. And yeah, that's what the comment I wanted to make.
Thank you very much.
I was just going to say I agree with you, creating the right environment, and I believe again it's on us as women, because for creating the right environment and for inspiring others, we have to take the extra step of sharing our stories and coaching and having mentees and being a role model. We have to spend time on this one. This is very serious. And our organizations, we have to raise our hands to really question, challenge the culture we have, the purpose we're going to build. Then I think we'll make it more aware and encourage more women or more girls to take the next step. Exactly.
And if I can add, is not just our responsibility as a woman, but all of us, men and women. Because it's important, because at the end of the day, as a woman in leadership position, they're not enough. We definitely need to be a role model, but it's important to have all the men helping us on that. It's the reason why when you have any kind of women association in the company, it's important to have men on board. Also because, you know, they have wife, they have children, whatever, so they should help us on that. For the moment.
It will change.
Wait and see.
50 years.
But you made a good point, I think, about when the role models seem too distant, then girls and women don't respond to that because they don't see that as a realistic expectation for them. So we need to get the role models right at every level. It's not just becoming the top manager of a top tech company or an astronaut, because many girls don't see that as a realistic expectation in their careers. So we need to have other role models. And the last thing, which I think is very interesting, is it used to be the case that girls were exposed to in the classroom to what the teachers told them and so on, and of course to the influence of the families. Today's with technology, girls can take a lot of responsibility and initiative in learning many things through their laptops and computers, to which they have as much access as boys do. So in some ways, technology can compensate for the biases that they could find at other levels. Sorry.
No worries. I have a small question following the role model. What about all type of women? What do we do? How do you engage and make sure that we also represent all type of women? Women of color, obviously. Women with different type of abilities, trans women, LGBTQ. What are the things that you are doing to ensure that we represent all type of women, so all type of girls can see themselves in STEM?
Well, I can just speak for our company. When we talk about a diversity, inclusion, culture, it's not just women. It's any kind of diversity. So we are definitely working on this. This means to start measuring, make a measure where we are today, put a measurable target where we want to go, and help to reach this target, but also understand if there are barriers, if there are issues. So give to these people the opportunity to speak loudly, to understand if there is something that we need to do in a different way, and to work together to have a better diversity inclusion culture.
Okay, so thank you very much again for your participation, and please thank all the panel members for their really interesting contributions. And we do hope this will make a small difference in taking more steps further. Thank you very much.